Hello everyone. Let's head on to our first case. Case 1. Am I the bad person for not covering for my coworker with a sick kid, resulting in her being fired? Some background info. I, 25F, work as a hospice nurse for a home hospice company. All of the nurses are salaried, and we make our own hours for the most part. This is a desirable job for nurses wanting to get out of working 12-hour shifts at hospitals. It's very desirable for parents especially. We all have to take turns being on call overnight, roughly once every 2 weeks. This is mandatory. All of my coworkers have kids pretty much. Everyone except me. In the 3 years that I have been here, I have asked my coworkers for virtually nothing. I never really get sick, and I handle my stuff. I have never called out of an on-call shift. My boss has a 3 strikes rule, where if you have to call out of your on-call shift 3 times within a year, you get fired. No exceptions. If you trade your on-call shift, however, it doesn't count against you. It only counts against you if our boss has to mandate someone into covering the shift. I have watched my boss fire several people over this in the few years that I have worked here. We got a new coworker, let's say Mandy, about 4 months ago. She has called out of her on-call shift twice so far, so not a good track record. Apparently her husband is active duty and deploys a lot, and she has 4 kids and struggles to find a babysitter for them. This past Monday was Mandy's on call again. She sent out an email begging for someone to take it because her babysitter got sick. I offered to trade her if she works Valentine's Day for me. Win-win, right? I get Valentine's Day off and can go on a date. And Mandy gets her shift covered and doesn't get fired. Mandy said her husband comes back on Thursday and they wanted to go out for Valentine's Day. Apparently their marriage was heading towards divorce and they really needed this night. She asked me if she could just work a day for me next month instead. I said no chance. She tried guilting me and shaming me, so eventually I just said fuck it, you're on your own. She tried to backpedal, but I said no. She pleaded with both me and our boss, but Mandy got fired. I can tell my boss and some of our coworkers think I'm an asshole since I had the free time to cover her shift and I don't have kids or anything. Am I the bad person? What do you guys think? Lay down your ruling in the comments section and let's move on to our next story. Case 2. Am I the bad person for excluding my dad's partner from any and all plans for my child's birth? So bit of a backstory, my mother died years ago, 20 years plus, and my dad has had his partner for 15 years or more. I have a wife and child and one on the way. Also, I'll detail the pertinent reason why I have excluded her, but this is one of many stunts she pulled. Also, we are UK based. Onto the situation, when my wife were having our first child, we planned for my dad's partner to pick us up from hospital after the birth, which turned out to be late. Baby wasn't planning on coming out. So it's mid-December, we exit the maternity ward and I ring dad's partner to find out where she was, and she states she is in the main corridor of the hospital and can't see us. We were on the main corridor. After a couple of minutes of saying you're not here, we can see the length of it, and it being 10 p.m. we realized she went to the entirely wrong hospital 30 miles away. Her response was to say, "Oh well, I'm sorry," and to hang up and refuse to answer her phone, leaving myself, my wife, and 4-day-old daughter in a hospital with no lift home in the middle of winter. Luckily, my dad came to rescue and picked us up. The other incident was her callous response to my wife's midterm miscarriage, which was, "There is a reason it died, move on." To say the least, we do not want her around us, not as she's been for years now, but she knows my wife is pregnant and is asking to have a role in the birth. I told my dad there isn't a cat's chance in hell I will let that woman near our family or be involved. She cannot be trusted, nor is she wanted near us. Bear in mind, my dad is a total wet lettuce who tries to keep the peace. So he kind of plays piggy in the middle to try and smooth things over. Well, after she found out, it's been a social media blitz of complaining about being excluded, including ruining his name reveal as well by accident, and well as getting her kids to ask. So last night I made a public FB and IG post explaining exactly why she is excluded and making it perfectly clear she isn't welcome in our lives. Some friends commented I was a bit harsh. My wife thinks it's really sweet I'm going up to bat for us like this, and my dad is kinda upset I didn't explain how I felt. So, I'm feeling a tad bit regretful as I'm not normally this hot-headed. Did I go too far? Am I the bad person? What do you guys think of this one? Let us know in the comments section and let's move on to our next story. Case 3. Am I the bad person for not allowing my son to go to his paternal grandparents' anniversary barbecue because his father's stepchildren will be there? I, 33F, have a 7-year-old son with my ex, 35M. Almost a year ago, I was given full custody of our son and my ex was awarded supervised visitation. The reason for this was the abuse our son was suffering at the hands of his father's stepchildren, 12 and 13. This was a very difficult battle to win. It started 3 years ago when my son came home from his father's house and my ex announced he'd gotten remarried over the weekend and he wanted me to pay half toward the clothes he bought our son for the wedding because they got ruined. Of course I didn't pay half, but I did ask why he expected me to pay and why the clothes were ruined. He said he felt like we should split the cost of big items like that. Then he refused to answer how they got ruined. Later that evening when I was bathing my son, I noticed some bruises on him and it made me suspicious. He mentioned his arms hurt and that the big kids had done it. A few weeks later my ex called me and asked me to come and calm our son down. He said our son was hysterical and he had been unable to calm him. When I got to his house our son was still crying and wanted to come home with me. My ex's wife said one of her kids had accidentally stepped in my son's foot and my son got scared. But I could hear one of her kids in the background calling my son names and saying they wanted to shut him up. Over time things got worse. There were more bruises and more days where my son would get very upset at his dad's house. I spoke to my ex who said his stepkids were taking it bad that their mom had remarried and that they had lost their dad only 4 years prior and it was difficult for them. He said he and our son weren't their favorite people. But he said it wasn't a big deal. I decided to document these incidents and injuries anyway because it appeared to me my ex was not concerned and our son could be at risk in his home. As my son got bigger he'd verbalize more and more about what was going on. The stepkids treated him like shit and were not embarrassed or ashamed to be rough with him. He'd get pushed and grabbed and a lot of these accidents were happening. I put in a few calls to CPS and they started to offer resources. It pissed off my ex, but I was worried for my son. The verbal incidents weren't on CPS's radar really, but the physical stuff they also documented, and some of my ex's family had witnessed things and a few even sent me rundowns about what happened. The incident that brought us to me getting full custody was my ex and his wife leaving the 3 kids home alone for hours together and the stepkids dragged my son out of the house and locked him in the garage on his own, where all the dangerous tools were held. My ex tried to fight for his right to retain custody, but CPS and the judge agreed it was not safe for our son. The reason he only gets supervised visits is his stepkids are not allowed around my son. My ex's parents are celebrating their wedding anniversary next month and they want my son there. But my ex and his family are invited and will be attending. I told them I could let them do something with him another time, but if the stepkids are there my son won't be. They, along with my ex's oldest brother, feel like I'm being unfair and too strict and not trusting them to keep my son safe. But he wasn't in the past. I know that for a fact. Am I the bad person? Can't wrap my head around that story. What do you think? Who is in the wrong there? Let us know down in the comments section and let's move on to our last case. Case 4. Am I the bad person for slapping my brother after he gave away the money he promised me to his wife? My brother is 27M and I am 20F. I don't want to sound entitled, but I am entitled to the money he promised me. Our parents had funded his business and he promised to give me money for my higher education, and I can't even ask my parents because they don't have money, but my brother does. A few days ago, I went to my brother and told him that I need money for my education and I need him to pay fee and help me a bit with other expenses. He said he can't because he used all his money to fund his wife's new business and he asked me to wait a while. I told him that I can't wait, it's going to cost me a whole year, and he said he can't help right now. I lost my cool cause my parents gave all their money to my brother and I didn't have a problem with it. We were wishing that he would become successful and help us, and he promised to help me find my education. I told him that he promised me, and it's not just his money, it's mine as well, and we all trusted him, but now he is betraying me and you don't have money? You should have saved up for me, I am your sister, but you compromised my education, betrayed me and our parents. He still said he doesn't have money, he invested all he had in his wife's business. I got so angry I slapped him and said that I don't need his help anymore and consider me dead, he can keep being his wife's slave and do her bidding. He grabbed my hand and tried to stop and talk to me, but I didn't listen to him and I left. I no longer care about my brother, TBHFK him. I thought it was his love that he cared so much about his wife, but now I know he's being used, but I am so stressed about my future, I don't know what to do, and deep down I still care for my brother, he used to help me so much. And now I am wondering what happened to him. You've sat down, you've listened. Now, it's time to state your ruling. What is it gonna be? Let us have it down in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more cases like these. In life, we may run, but we can never hide from true justice. Stay safe, everyone.